Welcome everybody to another webinar. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with Richard Forrest, Managing Director of Forrest Marketing Group. I'm Ingrid Maynard, Managing Director of The Sales Doctor, and we look at the continuation of sales really from lead generation right through to completion and conversion and retention between the two of us. Today's webinar is incredibly timely as we rapidly approach the end of May, coming into June. And today's title is, with many companies pushing to hit their numbers. Gosh, who doesn't feel that? This time of the year can be a stressful period for sales teams and sales managers, full of conflicting priorities. So we're going to talk about some strategies today, and I'm going to ask Richard our first question, which is, given that topic, Richard, what are your thoughts on it?
Yes, thank you, Ingrid, and thank you. Welcome, everybody. I think it's a great question. It's very easy to get caught up in the hype of end of financial year and hitting those targets, but it's really important not to get so tunnel focused that it's not all just about hitting the end of year targets. It's also about keeping an eye on what happens next year. So I think sales teams need to balance that more at this time of year than any other, and keep an eye on long-term strategies that are going to win them business for the new financial year, as well as obviously trying to hit their targets for end of financial year, but trying to juggle and balance both of those things. I think most companies have a real push, and even if they don't, somewhere in our psyche there is that it's end of financial year, I've got to get these deals across the line, and it's important to keep a really close eye on and spend some time on longer term strategies as well. And I suppose I'm going to throw this back to you actually, Ingrid, if I may. Because of these conflicting priorities, how do you suggest that salespeople, sales managers, sales team prioritize action to ensure that they remain on track, that their focus is on track at this time?
Look, I think becoming disciplined about your sales pipeline at any time is best practice. But the thing that I know about salespeople, and count myself as one of them, and I'm guilty of this as well, is continuing to look for shiny objects and all of the new opportunities that are there. And I'm not saying that we don't look out for them, we don't nurture them, we don't bring them into the pipeline. But I think that we're coming up to the end of financial year where, like it or not, we're measured against our performance. And for many companies, the end of June is the end of financial year. Not for all companies. For some companies, their end of financial year, because they're a global business, might be later in the year. But it's still best practice to make sure that as we're coming up to the completion of a quarter or a particular trading period, that we realise and focus on conversion of all of those opportunities that are at that 80 to 90%, or what I call ready to close stage in the pipeline. And so all of your strategies, behaviours and focus needs to be around, how am I actually going to do that? What are my strategies to win? What do I need to make sure of? Making sure I'm not blindsided, making sure I've done everything that I can to ensure that I'm in the best possible running to win these opportunities, and then to bringing those home first. So that's the first priority. Second priority is to then continue to progress the others that are at what I call in the pipeline, but they might be at a 40 to 50% of completion stage, and so they need to be further progressed as well, because some of them might actually drop before the end of the financial year if we start working on them now. Some of them may not. And then, like you said, making sure that we're not going into transactional selling, that we're continuing to keep an eye on the long term, and making sure that we're maintaining our focus on business as usual, and being the best that we can.
Yeah, I think very, very good points.
So just talking about short-term strategies though, Richard, can you give us some examples of short-term strategies that sales teams can use?
Yes, absolutely. It's it's probably somewhat cliched, and I think people probably know most of these things, but perhaps it's still worth going over and talking.
Yeah.
One with the obvious thing, and this is sales 101 in many ways, is the time limit. Things are happening at the end of financial year, and putting in offers that encourage people to buy before the end of financial year comes up. And that talks to your point about the people who are in the pipeline who are looking like they're converting and helping those people to make a decision this side of the financial year. It doesn't have to be price related at all. It can be, well, it probably is price related, but what I mean is it doesn't have to be a price discount. It can be, in the new financial year, our prices are going up. So if you want to lock in today's prices, get the order form through to me before the end of June, and getting people to make that decision. So it's a timely offer, but not discounting your prices. The other areas, I suppose, to look at with potential prospects is to look at them in different segments. So the new customers, people who've never bought from you before, I think fall into that kind of, let's put together an offer for them that is an incentive for them to buy. Current customers as well, as another group, again, can be lock-in pricing. If they're doing something, or they've got a renewal date that's coming up, lock in this year's pricing by renewing now. The challenge with that, of course, is you can end up moving next year's revenue into this year. If it makes your numbers look good this year is not actually a great win. So you've got to be careful of that. The other opportunities with existing customers, I think, is upsell and cross-sell opportunities that may have a special price if they take them up between now and the end of financial year.
Absolutely. They're fantastic strategies, actually, and very doable, because sometimes salespeople forget about their existing customers, don't they, Richard? And I really appreciate the fact that you've redirected our thinking this morning around the opportunities that are already there that we might be able to do more with and look after even further.
I think if you segment it a little bit further, if I may, the other thing is that it's very easy when you've got a series of very big customers to focus your attention on them and ignore the small companies, because they don't make up, as an individual seller, they don't make up an awful lot of your of value on their own. But if you mass them together, they can actually be 60 or maybe even 70% of your business. And these are people in smaller companies, they can generally make very quick buying decisions. They're not the behemoths of industry that take weeks and months to make decisions, and years in some cases, but they're much more agile. So talking to smaller companies and focusing time with them can be a very good way of getting quick wins. And also with smaller organizations, sometimes they're a smaller customer of yours, not because they're a smaller organization, but because you've only got a small share of wallet. And they're spending with one of your competitors. So if you can win a sale, an extra sale from them, you're effectively moving a sale from your competitor back to you. And so that's a good way to look at your current customers. And then finally, I suppose the other group is your past customers, the people who used to buy from you who haven't. And those people generally have gone away for one of two reasons. One is they were unhappy. The other is that the contact person that you had in that organization has left and been replaced with somebody else who doesn't have a relationship with you. Again, these companies can be contacted. They can often make very quick decisions, buying decisions. You can sort out the problem that's been bothering them. You can reintroduce yourself and win those clients back, and can be really good. And one final suggestion is for companies that provide a product that they then service. So I know we're talking B2B, but the obvious example of this is a B2C one, typically, which is you buy a car from a dealership and then they service that car. But it could equally be an elevator company. So you manufacture and supply elevators to buildings, but a third party does the servicing of those. Calling those companies, those clients that you've installed for or provided the product for, and offering to do the service for them is a very good way to build not just revenue before end of financial year, but also on an ongoing basis, and start to bring some of those clients back into the fold on the service front rather than just on the product front, if that makes sense.
You've just made me think of a particular client who gives away a lot of that servicing for free, and really thinks that it's in that servicing where the value is. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily, but it doesn't hurt to put a dollar figure against that extra value, because there's a lot of capital that's invested in that time and effort and relationship that that just needs to have a return against it. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. And again, what you're highlighting here, Richard, is just good, solid, business as usual practice for salespeople. The great thing is that sometimes we lose track of what we really need to be doing, the discipline of sales, going back and reigniting or getting greater share of wallet with existing clients, but also reigniting those past or lapsed client opportunities as well. And I would be hoping that a lot of salespeople are doing that, but sometimes it's not until there's a sense of urgency that we remember all of these important things that we need to reintroduce to our daily practice.
I think that's right. I think when things are going well, we just concentrate on the sales that are coming in. It's not either there's pressure to hit a number or there's a downturn that we go, oh, where are we going to get these other sales from? But actually, if you manage and nurture those other pipelines on a consistent basis, your business grows significantly if you can do the two at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose just coming back, I'm going to ask you a question. It's a bit of verbal ping pong today, back and forth between you and I. Is there a way, do you think there's a way to use this time of year as an advantage to realizing sales? And if so, how would you suggest people do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things. I mean, I really think that end of financial year is a great opportunity for sales teams to make sure that they're using it as a catalyst for their clients to have a deadline, because for some, particularly in this environment, Richard, where there's so much uncertainty still, there's a lot of ambiguity, there's still some volatility, and for a lot of people, it's not business as usual yet. And so with that, buying decisions can sometimes be delayed. And so to help people along, you've already mentioned some fantastic strategies there. One of the things that I recommend is in terms of options around payment. So the price, in my opinion, should always be determined based on margin and a good solid ROI for the client, but also that it's going to be profitable for us. So I'm not a big fan of discounting. However, what I will say is that if a client pays in full for 12 months and we offer a 5% discount for that payment in full, sometimes that's, especially at this time of the year, that's a big advantage, because they can claim that expense earlier than later, so in this financial year. So it's a bonus. They also save money, and the advantage for us as salespeople or organisations benefiting from that lump sum payment is that that's cash that we otherwise would have to have amortised over the course of the next 12 months. So it's a big advantage there. So it needs to be enough so that it is enticing for the business, but it also mustn't erode too much of your margin. Otherwise, you're stopping yourself from really having a commercial approach to the way that you engage. The other thing that I would say is that for salespeople, just to watch, there's a big difference between urgency and panic, and and it's important that we keep the pressure on. I think as salespeople, we've always got to have our foot slightly down on the accelerator, because we do need to make sure that we're not taking our foot off, because it's too hard to rebuild that momentum. Having said that, if we start to really go, oh, quick, I've got to get my numbers for this year no matter what, and some companies, depending on their KPIs, can be driving the wrong behaviours, but it can also turn a normally very engaging, deep
relationship building salesperson into a highly transactional one. And that level of desperation, that whole change of the way that we show up, our language, can be off-putting to a client who might otherwise buy. Might be first week of July. So we've got to always play that, that balancing game of, do I run the risk of getting money now and losing the loyalty, the trust, and all of that goodwill that emotional value that I've built up over, this period of time in putting this deal together? Yeah. Or do I maintain and play the long game here and make sure that I'm building for the future? I think there just needs to be just a bit of a common sense approach. Urgency, absolutely, but not panic.
Yes. I think it's there are a couple of things you said there that really resonated with me. The last one you said is really, I'm going to interpret as, it's great as sales leaders to come up with these ideas for, let's get this revenue in before the end of financial year. What we often don't think about is, what does that strategy do when it's translated into actions by the salesperson out visiting the customer, which can be, it develops that transactional air of desperation. I've got to get across the line, which of course undermines all of the general sales philosophies that the company is probably standing for, and making sure that it isn't seen as transactional. The salespeople understand that it's not transactional, and they don't present in that way. Is the other thing you mentioned, I thought was good, was about bringing the whole sale forward now instead of amortizing over a number of months. And I think that the thing that becomes hard is when you're selling a product or service and it's always amortized over a number of months. It's a brave step to go, Mr. Customer, why don't you pay for this all in the new financial year? I know it's 6 times as much as you were thinking of paying every month, but we can save you some money. But actually, that's what salespeople are there for, is to be brave, to ask that question. And if the person says no, there's nothing lost. But the times that they say yes, it's a huge benefit to the organization. And it's a question of salespeople remembering to be brave and not just go through the motions, I think is what you were saying there.
Oh no, spot on, Richard. And the other part of that is that if you feel that you can't ask that question, then I would perhaps offer up to that salesperson that maybe there's not enough trust there in the relationship to feel like that's going to land somewhere with the right intention. Because I think if you've always got the customer's best interests in mind, then it's going to be okay, actually, to ask that question. Now, whether it suits the customer or not, because of their financial strategy or, the other drivers that they have going on in their decision-making, then that's a whole other conversation. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if somebody felt like, oh, I don't think I can ask that, but then I would absolutely say, well, maybe there hasn't been enough work done to give you the right to ask the question.
Or to have and maybe even the self-belief or belief in the product they're selling to ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've kind of touched on some short-term strategies. What about long-term strategies? You mentioned those before as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep that long-term focus there. And actually, if you think about it, although it's more pronounced at end of financial year, which, as you rightly pointed out, is for probably 90% or 95% of businesses is coming up at the end of June, but for others it's at different times of the year. It also happens to an extent at the end of the month as well, where there's, to get the numbers in. So it is a recurring it's a recurring event, but it's more obvious at the end of financial year. And I think it's so important, even whether it's end of month or end of financial year, to keep an eye on building your pipeline. And the reason I say that is that if you don't do that, it's 2 things. If you don't do it, you're going to be behind the 8 ball for the next month, whether that's the first month of the new financial year or it's just the next month. And the other thing is that if you close on average, let's just say 1 in 10 of the proposals or prospects that you meet, and your close rate is 1 in 10, every time you make a sale, you have to bring 10 new prospects into your pipeline to replace that one sale that you've made. It's not, I've closed a deal, I need to get one more prospect in.
Yeah.
It's 10 times or 5 times or whatever it's more. And that's
Yeah.
often overlooked, and especially at the end of financial year.
Yeah.
People are going, I've closed 5 sales, great, but have you brought 50 new prospects in to make up for that? So I think that it's really important to keep the sales funnel full, to have activity going that is bringing new prospects into the pipeline, to make sure that when you start the new financial year or new month, that you're not starting with a blank canvas and going, oh, I hit my targets last month or last year, but I'm really going to struggle now because I've got nothing else to sell to.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think sales people and sales leaders especially need to be making sure that a reasonable amount of time is focused and energy is focused on building next year's sales opportunities, not leaving it till after the end of financial year and then starting, and losing all of July because the pipeline's ended. Or empty, because effectively then you've got an 11-year month, not a 12-year month, and that's a big deficit to try and pull back. What can they be doing to build that pipeline, to have prospecting going on in the background, to have whatever channels that they're working on are still working? And so if it's Google AdWords or if it's prospect, doesn't matter what it is, that might still be working in the background. But if the salesperson's attention is on the shiny new deal that I'm trying to sell between now and the end of the year, those prospects then don't get followed up. And I heard recently that I don't know if this is right, but I heard this, the chances of winning a sale from an inbound inquiry drop by 70% if you don't respond to that inquiry within 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
That is huge. That is huge.
Look, I'm not sure whether those numbers are absolute or not, but I'm sure that the essence of it is correct. And with salespeople focusing on bringing deals across between now and the end of the year, instead of following up or getting to that cold call prospect or that inbound prospect or wherever they're coming from in a timely fashion, they push it out and they leave it. And the people who are searching online aren't just talking to your organization, they're talking to your competitors too. So if you don't get back to them in a timely fashion and your competitor does, that deal is gone. By the time you get to them in the new financial year or a week later or a few days later, they've gone and the sale is lost forever. So there's an element of make sure the pipeline is full. And there's an other element is that make sure that the sales team are getting to all of those opportunities, following them up and keeping them nurtured so that they can become proper sales leads for next year, rather than, well, we got 30 leads in June, but we just didn't get any sales from it. Because we didn't actually get to them to talk to them. And I suppose just to wrap this point up, the final thing I would say is that there are companies out there who have got money to spend, that they're looking to spend it now, this financial year, because otherwise it goes. But equally, there are companies out there who are going, in the new financial year, I know I'm going to have the budget for this product, and now I'm going to start looking for it so I can get it bought early in the new year. So if you miss those opportunities at the end of financial year, they're gone forever, and you really will be struggling, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And can I ask you, in return, when salespeople, because at this time of year, one of the things is conflicting priorities, as we talked about, and therefore the pressure that comes with that. And when salespeople are under pressure, what would you suggest for them to maintain the balance, so it's short-term and long-term, and keep their focus in the right, it's not the right area, it's the right areas, so they can be effective, not distracted, and they can hit the short and long-term objectives? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think that this is definitely the time of the year to have daily practices put in place so that somebody can maintain that level of, or that sense of being grounded, calm, and focused and determined. That old saying of, what is it? Less haste, more speed. And I think that there are a few things that I would absolutely be encouraging salespeople to do. One is to get up earlier and make sure that you've got time in your day just for you, just to center yourself, whether that's a practice of meditation or whether that's just having a coffee and looking at the sky outside, or, you know, to kind of get your pineal gland activated and also that your brain's switched on and ready for the day, whether that's exercise in the morning, whatever you need to do for you to make sure that you're dedicating some time so that you're starting the day with a full tank of energy, because it's going to be utilized throughout the day. Breakfast is obviously an important thing for a lot of people, but just again, it's about that sense of that internal state of readiness for whatever comes in my day. Second thing is having structure in your calendar as well for focused time. So if that focused time is about, you know, calling new leads back, then I'm not going to be disturbed. So turning off notifications, making sure that I'm not going to be tempted to look at my phone, and that I'm just dedicating this time. I might even put a timer on so that I'm doing it in either 30-minute chunks with 5-minute breaks or 90-minute chunks with 15-minute breaks. That's highly effective work, and that enables us to go deeper and be more effective with that one course of action. The other thing is just again coming back to Stephen Covey's principles of, you know, first things first, and that really is about putting the big rocks in first. And, you know, for salespeople, it always has to be, you know, my big rocks are those AA and A clients, so the ones that have the highest potential for growth, for sales growth over the next 12 months. And for some of those opportunities, they will absolutely be now. What can I work on now? What can I work on for the future? And what can I continue to identify to put back into the pipeline? You also talked about, Richard, the pipeline. My recommendation is 2 to 3 times each person's sales target. They need to have that level of value in their sales pipeline at any given time. So you're absolutely right. As soon as an opportunity goes out of the pipeline because it's won, maybe it's lost, there needs to be, you know, that equivalent, so that at all times in a rolling year, you've still got that 2 to 3 times the value. Now, if your target goes up, obviously your pipeline value needs to also go up accordingly. And that means that we have to be consistently maintaining a discipline of keeping an eye on, you know, not only that value, but also the stages of the pipeline, so that we're maintaining a focus on all of those stages, so that there's not too much in the ready to close, because you're going to miss something. So similar to your statement about that data. Oh, it's horrifying. Around prospects and not getting back to prospects, and all of that opportunity going back out through the funnel because you're not there to take it. The other side of it is that you've got too much in that final stage ready to close. And because we've got so much there, if we're not disciplined and we're not well resourced and we're not well supported and planned, we can really miss those opportunities as well, or take shortcuts and get blindsided and be, sort of scratching our heads about, but I really thought we were a shoo-in for that. They told us as much verbally. They said this, they said that. Well, unless we've got that area of focus, we're simply going to miss stuff. Or we don't want too much, just above the pipeline, too much that's bright, shiny object kind of opportunity as well. We need to make sure that we've got a nice spread at all times. So we've got to make sure there's 2 to 3 times the amount in the sales pipeline at any given stage. 2, that there's a nice spread across the stages in the pipeline, so that we're not going to be overwhelmed or focusing in on the wrong things. And again, just making sure that we're always focused on our highest level priorities.
That's a good point. And actually, you reminded me of something I was talking about. If you make one sale, you have to replace it with another 5 or 10.
Yeah.
But what you pointed out there is it's just as true when you lose a sale. you have to bring another 5 or 10 leads in. So anytime somebody drops out of the funnel, you've got to be replacing them, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. And I noticed we are out of time. We're right on time now. Which is great. We seem to be able to do these 30-minute things to we haven't had a chance for people to ask questions. So if anybody does have a question now that they'd like to ask, please feel free to do that. I'm happy to stay on for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, if you have questions after the event, either of Ingrid or myself, we will send out to you in the next couple of days the video to this and contact details if you do want to reach out to either or both of us. So I'd like to wrap up and just say thank you to everybody for attending. It's great to be able to do this. I hope you're getting some value out of them. Our next one, Ingrid and I think it's going to be the Tuesday, the 20th of July. So probably a focus on what happens in the new financial year and what's ahead. But we will send out details of that. Ingrid, thank you so much as always. It's always a pleasure to see you and to work with you, collaborate with you. I know you've got 1,000,001 things on, and thank you for giving up your time again this morning.
It's an absolute pleasure, Richard. It's a privilege to be able to spend time with you and to be able to support our beloved salespeople, especially when they have a lot on. They have so much on this year. So so really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Ingrid. Lovely to see you, and I'll see you again soon. Good luck with your day today, and for everyone else out there, have a great day too.
Thank you. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.